Okay guys, so we're going to do a quick cutting comparison, this time featuring several swords that are often seen on my wall in my office. We have kind of single-handed sabers that we're going to be comparing this time. So these are all paper cutting sharp edges, unlike the last test, which was comparing different types of edges. We have a Cutlass size machete by Condor, an LKChen Yanglingdao, type of Pei Dao, a longer style Woyao Dao by LKChen, and from Peserey Handicrafts, a Turkish or Ottoman Kilij, a type of Turkish saber with the big prominent false edge. Okay, so I have no idea how well this rig is going to work, but I'm going to try and do cuts against this kind of styrofoam target. I'm just going to deliver simple cuts to it using each of the swords. I'm going to give simple kind of wrist-powered cuts, nothing fancy, and we'll see how deeply they go in. So starting with the Cutlass. Okay, so the Cutlass went in through the, we'll say 1.3 squares. We'll try it again a second time, see if it's consistent. Yeah, pretty consistent. It's about 1.3 squares. Yanglingdao. Yanlingdao went through significantly easier, and that went through 2.3 squares. I'll try one more. It wobbled a little that time, but it went through easily. I cut, and this time I didn't cut as deeply, so the tip got buried inside of the foam, and it started to scoop. So you can see that my curve traced a bit of an arc, but even so, it went in basically 2 squares. I don't think we've seen much of the Woyao Dao on camera up until this point. It is almost a cavalry length blade. Again, these are based off of Japanese swords originally, so they're almost like katana length blade, but fitted in a one-handed grip. Okay. Well, it certainly felt like it had more of an impact, but I think I may have retraced the cut from one of the earlier swords. That's the danger of being too consistent and having the same target over and over again. So let's try that in a different spot. All right. Once again, I hit one of my previous targets. I'm going to try for one of the open areas here. Is there? There's a void there. What am I going to do about that? I'm thinking I do have a second piece of foam, but I'd like to try and see if I can aim for a clean spot before I have to resort to that foam. Here, let me line it up. All right, nice and clean. Let's see how good my aim can be. There we go. That's a little bit better. All right. So on that one, we made it in about 1.5, say 1.5 squares. I'd like to, you can see I struck it reasonably deeply in the blade with a lot of the tip projecting. I'd like to strike it a little bit further out, so closer to the foible, and I think might be where the sweet spot is. So let me try it again. My foam's definitely starting to lose integrity. All right. Whoop. Well, we went deeper, but I'm pretty sure we were traveling through a path already traveled. So that made it 2.2 squares, but I think we were using a channel already in it. There is some free foam right over there. I'll try one more time. Now that is interesting. I think I'm pretty sure I hit it completely square, but it didn't bite. And that's one of the few times that I know for sure I didn't hit it in one of the previous channels. I'm going to try an experiment. I'm going to try and strike it on the side where it hasn't been perforated at all. Now I might risk going through one of the channels from the other side, but I want to see what happens if the blade is accelerating enough to pierce any of the foam, because this is a heavier and slower sword, so it takes a little bit more to accelerate it. Maybe I need to work out my forearms a little bit better. All right, so it was able to go through, but look, now it's only gone through. Now this foam is a little bit thicker than the other foam. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cells, and this bottom one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cells. So it's basically gone through one of the whole bottom cell. So this is getting a score of 1 compared to what the other one did. So this didn't even outperform the Cutlass. Very, very interesting with a standard Moulinet. And now for something a little lighter, the Ottoman Kilij. Well, that one buried itself all the way into the box. I think we have a winner for this particular test. Obviously, it excels at this target. And just to make sure it's not a fluke, do I have any space where we can strike it again? Here, I'll just use the fresh foam. Here, this one is an unspoiled foam. It's gone about 5 centimeters into the cardboard, just for those of you who can't see on my side. And the same result. Again, 5 centimeters into the cardboard. So here is an example of sabers that are ostensibly, these are all very similar swords, but they have very different performances against this very light type of target. Let's give them something a little bit heavier. Hopefully I can do this. Can I balance this? All right. So I have no idea if this is going to work, but what I'd like to try and do is put them up against the back wall of this Costco box. We are going to chop up this arthritis pain box. And we'll start with the one that went last, which is the Kilij. And again, I'm just going to be doing these little Moulinet wrist cuts. And again, you can see that the Ottoman saber is definitely equipped for it, whereas the Woyao Dao was having a very hard time. It's probably not meant for that style of cutting. All right, so it's made it approximately 40%, no, I'm sorry, approximately 65% of the way through the back of the box. Woyao Dao versus the heavier target. All right, now we're doing a little bit better. This time it made it almost exactly 50% of the way through the box. Yanglingdao versus heavy cardboard. It went down very slightly less than the Kilij, but we'll say 60 versus 65% of the way through. Very similar in what it was able to carve. And just for shad, we have a machete with distal taper, the Condor Cutlass machete. Oh, my box lost integrity, so I won't count that one. We will try a different one. Hang on, we'll try this wall instead. And this one has cut very slightly less than the Yanglingdao. So if the Yanglingdao was 60%, this is 55% of the way through or so. Still very impressive and decidedly better than the Woyao Dao. So these are only 2 tests, and we didn't do enough trials for it to be scientific. So it's the trend recently where I'm just doing some backyard experiments, and I figured I'd film it to show everyone what's been going on. So we had 2 different tests, 2 very different cutting mediums, and you can see that the blades behaved quite a bit differently. We had the machete with this very, very, very thin blade that can accelerate very quickly. And again, remember, these are all sharp. Did not so well against the spongy foam, but did surprisingly well against the cardboard. And again, this is something meant to scythe through underbrush, thin branches, grass, bamboo, things like that. So cardboard is not heavy enough to challenge it, but it does provide a resistant enough material that it's able to get through. It did okay against this. The Woyao Dao seemed to suffer the worst. And again, I think that perhaps the type of cutting I was doing was not suited for Woyao Dao, because I was basically doing European-style moulinaise with the Woyao Dao, and perhaps it needs to have a more Eastern-centric swinging from the elbow, swinging from the shoulder, in order to move such a big, heavy cavalry saber and really get the most out of those type of cuts. So just to make everything uniform, I was trying to do the same sort of cuts, and it probably requires a different sort of swordsmanship. But it didn't perform very well at all on the sponge block. It basically was just bonking into it and springing back. So even though it's sharp, it's kind of like if you're hitting a balloon. If you hit it really, really hard with a stick, eventually the balloon will pop. But if you don't swing fast enough, the balloon's just going to be batted away. And the same thing was happening with the sponge block with that Woyao Dao. The Yanglingdao did very good at both the sponge block and the cardboard box, but it was outshone by the Turkish Kilij. So the Kilij just completely blew this away. It probably could have gone through 2 of these blocks. It is obviously optimized with this very, very thin final cutting edge for just slicing through thin targets. Anything like skin or light clothing would have devastating effect against. It did okay against the box. I think it still scored the best. Yeah, it still had the best score. Very close was the Yanglingdao. So I'd say that if we run enough trials, they'd probably come out about the same. But it was it wasn't being slowed down at all by this styrofoam. So it's clearly perfect for light style targets that just need something to be able to cleave and separate the bonds that are holding this type of material together. Anyway, that's all for this time. We'll be back next time for maybe a closer review for each of these weapons. Take care. I'll try it one more time, now that I have essentially a fresh cutting surface, and let's see if we get the same results. May have missed my mark. Took a little scoop off the edge there. And once again, it bounced right off. So this blade is having a hard time going through the foam, probably because I'm just not accelerating it fast enough. And it's a little bit on the heavy side, especially with how much presence is out there. It's keeping a lot of the weight out in the blade instead of here in the hand. So it's not quite as nimble to maneuver, certainly not as much as the Yanglingdao and the machete, which is much thinner stock than the Yao Dao, the Wo Yao Dao. Very, very interesting results.